real estate business. And so we're looking at getting into another business right now, taking a look at the feasibility of it and the costs and locations. And we want to go out and take a look at an existing company that is the model of it in Indiana to see if we want to get into it. So right now we're just doing kind of a look at it and see what we want to do with it. It's the concept is a do-it-yourself full-service garage.
Love it.
Where we have, say, 5 bays, and we have a fully stocked tool room. Two of the bays would have just floor jacks and sets of tools, and then 3 would have lifts, and there would be access to air tools, and they would rent by the stalls would rent by the hour, and the power tools would rent, and folks could come in and do their own work. There's a place out in Indiana called the DIY Garage.
Wow, love it.
And so just thinking about getting into that.
I would think that location would be critical. Location selection would be absolutely critical for that, because while there is certainly a target market for that kind of thing, obviously you're not going to do that in New York. You're not going to do that in California anywhere. Yeah. Right. So location selection will be absolutely critical, and possibly the most important aspect of that business choice.
I feel that California would have a market. We live in very rural California. Most of our car dealerships suffer because of the lack of people bringing their vehicles to the dealerships. I happen to know that because I'm involved in a couple. That concept will work very well. My son is a mechanic. He is now specialized into Harleys, and he had to spend quite a bit of money retrofitting his garage to handle his avocation, I should say. But I think that concept is dynamite, and I see it huge in the Midwest, where we still have people that do things themselves and not rely on the services of others. One thing that struck me, Eric, and I know that whatever you and your wife choose is going to go in the right direction, is that you did write down on paper, and I'm a fan of 3x5 cards. I have a whole closet full of card files. You wrote down and told yourself what was going to happen. And over the last few years working with aspiring business people, that seems to be something everybody doesn't want to do, or most people do not want to do. They'll type all day, but I think that many of us have learned that when we take pen in hand and write on paper thoughts, we've done and used 3 different systems that can help embed that into our subconscious. When I was 17, I read a book about, everybody knows about the 3 books that started my life. And it was so simple. The 6 simple steps to success is I wrote it down. And as a freshman in college, I hired 2 professors and we started the business. But it was written down. It was planned. Very simple. We weren't asking for money, so I didn't need to write a fancy business plan. But I did very much what you said, Eric, on your 3x5 cards. And that system has worked over and over and over again. But I think Colin will agree that there are so many people today who feel that those steps are not necessary because we have all this, quote, technology.
Maybe not. I'm not a fan of 3x5 cards. I prefer junior legal pads, but the concept is identical. And I've got stacks and stacks of them. Yep. there is something satisfying about writing it down rather than typing it up, because you get it's the same satisfaction you get from reading a newspaper rather than reading your news online.
Digital. Right. The thing about the 3x5 cards, Colin, is it's been years since, just lately we've started to do our road trips again, but a major portion of my life has been networking in the true sense of the word, not what what we see on the internet. And I met people on airplanes, in restaurants around the United States and in other countries. And when I met them and engaged with them, the 3x5 card carried in my pocket was an easy way to record that information. You meet somebody this year on a flight across country and they mention they have property in Florida, and 5 months later you meet somebody in another venue and they're looking for property in Florida. And since you've filed that card in the proper spot, it's very easy to pull that card, get the two people together, assure a consummated business venture, and of course you're compensated in the middle. And I can appreciate I don't use 3x5 cards as much today because I don't travel as much today. But they've always been.
The concept is the same. I mean, as long as you have a mechanism for recording the information, in such a scenario, I would be using a phone because I'm a nerd that way.
But you're absolutely, there's a generational gap.
Believe it or not, I'm closer to your generation than I want to believe. And especially, I get to be, with the exception of you gentlemen, I get to be one of the elders that get to stroke my beard and offer sage advice to 20-somethings on here quite often, which amuses me to no end. I've never been a big networker. It's been for me a challenge. I tend instead to rely on the quality of the services I provide and word of mouth from there, rather than pushing my marketing through networking or through other marketing. I've never advertised my business ever.
Right.
Currently, I don't actually have a website, which is interesting because I develop IT infrastructure. And when I did have a website, it simply said, "We're too busy helping our customers to worry about our own website. Here's a list of a few of our customers. If you like what we did for them, send me an email." That was it. Yeah. It was, and people will talk about SEO or search engine optimization for their content. That was the best SEO I could have possibly had. I had links from each of my customers' websites onto mine, and all it did was list my other customers' websites and have a place where they could send me an email. That was it.
What prompted you to enter the business that you're involved in, Colin? Was it an evolution or a decision?
There was a bit of an evolution. The evolution was back in college, though. I started out in electrical and mechanical engineering, and realized I didn't like Calc 3, so I bailed out and went for economics because I had a couple of econ courses that I enjoyed very much. I then went back and justified that decision by telling myself that any idiot can learn engineering or computer science on their own by simply undertaking it, learn on the job. Whereas learning on the job in economics doesn't fly because you're going to go broke in the process, or nobody's going to hire you. So I went that route and almost ended up working at Bear Stearns, which in retrospect would have been a disaster anyway. They offered me a job 2 days after I accepted a job at an enterprise networking company. And so I did that for a while, doing network engineering and product development, and then worked at a major academic institution, which was a very different and interesting corporate culture, but interesting cultural change. My observation there is in the business world, people will stab you in the back. In academia, they'll try and stab you in the face. but it's interesting. They'll stab you in the face over a much smaller piece of the pie than they will in the enterprise world. So having done that for a while.
Just out of curiosity, Colin, have you noticed that academia seems to have a larger percentage of inflated egos than does the business world?
Yes. And unjustifiably inflated egos.
There's no basis or foundation.
Right, and fighting over the scraps of the corporate world.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Oh, well, we got this great NIH grant. Oh, gee, we got this other grant, and it's a couple of $1,000s. Whereas in corporate environments, oh, gee, here's my budget of $5-6 million. Okay, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. You get it done, and it's nothing. Whereas in academia, oh my God, I got my grant for $10,000. I'm on easy street for the next 8 months. Really?
Yeah.
That's not how that works. And that's why they're in academia. They don't understand business in any sense of the word. So
except there are pockets.
There are pockets. There are academics who own 150 patents to their name and are able to build businesses around that portfolio. They're few and far between, and most of them are assholes too. But I suppose that's just a judgment call. And
I have to ask a question.
This being on the record, I'm sort of regretting that. Anyway, yes, your question.
I'm seeing your vision to my right anyway, and a little Twitter with the colon @RandCom. How is that affected? I'm
all right.
fairly new.
So that's what they call lower third. It's produced by use of, in my case, a software application called CamTwist, available for Mac.
Okay.
They also have there are alternate packages for Windows. You can use a program called ManyCam. You can also use a much more professional setup, a live video switcher like Wirecast, which costs a ton of money. Whether or not it's effective in this environment, who knows? But I've been playing around with all sorts of video solutions just to amuse myself.
So what you've done is this is a piece of software that actually interfaces that script onto your video. Is that correct?
What we're looking at is this. This is the software right here.
I see.
And it allows me to manipulate my video and add effects to it. For example, you can do silly effects like I don't know. How about like you could put the whole video in a cube, right? Silly effects like that,
all right?
Right. But more importantly, you can do things like adding a counter, right? Or whatever adding text overlays and adding.
Is that what that is? Is a text overlay? The Twitter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I find that very pleasing and
right.
And not overt. Do you agree, Eric? I mean, why not? Now I see that this person is it's just a different approach. I like that. And this software is named what?
This is CamTwist.
CamTwist. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, we'll have to look that one up. And is this also similar to something I heard the other night called ManyCam?
Yes, ManyCam.
ManyCam.
People don't pronounce it correctly. It's ManyCam.
ManyCam.
And why is this not working? I was just there. Come on, camera. You can do it.
I have a hard time turning the on and off.
This sometimes this gets a little gummed up here. Anyway, let's see.
Did you check the lights in the room? Maybe somebody turned the light on.
No, it sometimes when switching back to the webcam, it gets a little gummed up here.
While you're doing that, again, the topic is what criteria do you use to choose a business venture? And I'm a fan of the real estate business. Eric and his wife chose direction, either evolutionary or by decision. I reflect. What prompted me to do this is this morning I was thinking about my life, which we often do as individuals, and I listened to the wisdom of my grandfather and father as I was growing up. They were just dumb immigrants, and that's a euphemism, a very affectionate euphemism in my family. And the one thing I can remember Grandpa saying back in the 40s, that there's two things that people are ever, and of course our family was involved in this in Europe, and that's food and a place to live, land. He said, the beauty of food is that it's constantly being produced. And if there are any mistakes or tragedies, they can be overcome by doing it again and over and over and over again. Land, of course, is not being manufactured anymore, at least as we know it here on this earth.
Except in Dubai.
That's correct. And China's doing a great job on their islands over there. And New York and places like that, they manufactured land. But the nitty gritty is we're not going to have huge land masses created, but yet people will always need land, not only to grow food. Thank goodness we need less of it. But
this looks like a bit of a failure. I'm going to hop out and hop back in. See if I can recover it.
Come on back in. Sure.
All right.
And so that kind of gave me personally a direction. Now, the beautiful thing about those two very broad-based foundations is there's just an unlimited multitude of how you can be involved in food production. There's an unlimited number of ways that you can be involved in land, real estate, if we want to call it. And I always felt that you can't lose if you immerse yourself in those two directions. Now, today, we have this high-tech business, which has offered multi-millions of dollars to many people around the world. But as somebody said in a blab that I joined not too long ago, or maybe it was just here, maybe Randy Collins said it, what's new today is really old tomorrow because of the fast-paced technology that we're experiencing with people like Colin and these engineers that are being produced around the world. My problem is my mindset. I learned at an early age is that I'm not a very broad, or let me put it this way, I'm a simple person, and growing crops is a very simple thing for me to do. And it was early on, and it has been all my life. The fact that I plant a seed well in a well-prepared foundation, and if I chose correctly the crop to grow in the right location, the odds are I'm going to have a harvest. And if I'm involved in the marketing of that product, I'm able to assure myself a profit. Only twice in my life have I had total loss, and that was due to an abnormal climatic condition that wiped out everybody's crop. In other words, it didn't matter how good I was in my field. It was something beyond my control. But
so it's my understanding, though, that individual and small business farms are getting squeezed now to a degree where the margins
that's the biggest crock in the world, and it's foisted upon this mentality, the growing mentality, by those same people that you're talking about, the big business. I proved I moved up here. I left farming for several years, was involved in the Southern California, enjoyed the real estate and finance boom. We had a little bank venture and tennis court and apartment buildings and office buildings and built homes on the back nine of the golf course. I got tired of it. I didn't enjoy myself as much as I did farming, so I left and moved to Northern California and started farming. But what I had learned down in the Coachella Valley and in Mexico is there are so many profit farming. So what I did is I took 20 acres, farmed vegetables, But I was able to enjoy in my pocket every profit margin system of taking that crop from the field to your table. We ended up with restaurants actually serving our food directly to people tonight that was harvested today. You don't need thousands of acres, and you don't need huge budgets to do this, and you don't need huge staffs. One couple, my wife and our children, were the sole staff of this little 20-acre empire, which let me just say this, it grossed and netted more money per acre than almost, other than marijuana farming, probably more than any other crop around. And so today we started something called Farmers Market, a group of 5 of us, and this is 25, 30 years ago. Today, farmers markets are a proliferation across the country. And if you attend a farmers market, you can meet people who are maybe working 5 acres, 10 acres, maybe specializing in just one item, and their return on investment is huge, and they can support their family. Now, I'm not talking Rolls Royces, folks, but they can support their family. And it's a way of life. It becomes who you are. Now, what I enjoyed was I not only sold out of the fruit stand we had on our property, we also raised livestock and provided you that fresh livestock butchered, take home, cook, and, eggs and livestock products, pork, beef, lamb, chicken, rabbit, and also the vegetables. Again, nothing big, but I also took my surplus and sold it to local supermarkets. And my stuff flew off the shelf because it was fresh, locally grown, so on. There was a little marketing involved there, And but let's break it down into a small increment. Pickling cucumbers need to be picked daily. So I had a sign out there, you pick pickling cucumbers, 10 cents a pound. I had a quarter of an acre, that's 10,000 square feet, a postage stamp. Anybody's backyard, almost anybody's backyard could handle something like this, or even less than an eighth of an acre or whatever. That quarter of an acre twice a year netted $3,500 net after all expenses. So somebody said, why don't you plant 10 acres, Chuck? Well,
the market wouldn't bear it. What kind of idiot would tell you that? I mean,
well, obviously someone that didn't understand business. The local market couldn't handle an acre of pickling cucumbers because the ladies that came out every morning with their 5-gallon buckets to pick cucumbers knew that they had to be a certain size, and that every day the plant is generating a new crop. Well, not every, it takes more than one day to go from flower to cucumber, but it's not much, maybe 72 hours. So you're constantly growing this, and eventually the vines go and you plow that up and plant another crop on that. But knowing your market, regardless, and I'm just using these as examples, knowing your market and staying in a business that you can totally control instead of having to rely on massive distribution and things of that nature, I always found very pleasing because I made a commitment in 1960 that I was always work from my home. I wanted to, what children I had, I wanted to be home to raise them, help work with my wife on that. And so the businesses we chose allowed us to do that. And we've never been at the top of the income heap. I have no desire to. We planned our life many years ago. The one thing I kind of had a sense of that I believed Social Security would be there. I wasn't happy with the way the government screwed it up, and it was a Ponzi scheme from the beginning. But I had enough faith to feel that. So we designed our life that our my wife's too young to collect Social Security, but my Social Security income was more than adequate to cover all of my needs and sustenance. In fact, there's money left over each month. Now, the other money earned allows us to build wealth, which has nothing to do with income. And that's where Eric's business, the real estate business, comes in. You may not have much money in your pocket and you may not be driving the Rolls Royce, but you're building wealth. And we all know over the last, at least in my lifetime, 73 years, the real estate market has been up and the real estate market has been down. When it's down, you buy, and when it's up, you sell. And if you're really intelligent, you buy property. I like commercial property, income property, that people continue to pay you rent, even after you've possibly paid off the mortgage, if you had a mortgage. I'm not a fan of mortgages. So these small thinking, in fact, we started a podcast on thinking small, has been a basis of business. But choosing the business, you chose technology, and it's interesting, the evolution there. And I really admire you, because I feel you guys are all in a very fascinating field, which has an unlimited income potential. What I do is limited to what can be produced in a given plot, you might say. So come on in.
As regards technology, I tend to artificially limit my income by choosing not to hire full-time employees.
Mm-hmm.
So my income is limited to the time I have to build my consulting practice, mm-hmm. and the degree to which I can build retainer clients and onboard them. But that typically involves an upfront hourly project.
Sure.
And so I'm limited to that degree with regard to how many clients I can onboard in a given year. That's perfectly fine by me. Mm-hmm. I don't rely on my consulting practice to build wealth. Building wealth is an entirely different venture,
right?
And I rely on capital allocation for that in the equities markets.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
And you're absolutely right. If you have a mortgage, pay it off. Live without debt, because you cannot build wealth if you have debt.
Absolutely.
If you're foolish enough to have credit card debt, get rid of that first. Then get rid of your mortgage. Then worry about building wealth. There's my 2 cents on it. Oh, and just to throw this in there, Warren Buffett claimed to be a simple man. He claimed that he would only invest in businesses he understood,
mm-hmm.
and that's worked. That's worked for you. That's worked for me, and I imagine that will work for everyone.
Interesting thing about Warren, though, he spends an awful lot of time learning or getting the information to understand that business.
Of course.
He's not a person who jumps in willy-nilly, although he does make quick decisions. He doesn't waste too much time on that decision, because usually your intuition, can be very helpful. Yeah. Eric, what are your feelings on using debt to leverage real estate?
Well, there's a couple of different routes that folks can go to invest in real estate. I get folks who come to me who talk about wanting to invest in real estate. And a lot of times the words creative financing come up. And I tell them,
as long as the creative financing doesn't involve a personal loan, you're probably okay.
There ain't no such thing as personal as creative financing. So get that out of your head. However, I once knew a man who never learned how to sell a house. He bought his first house when he and his wife were married, and he was in the Air Force and was transferred around a lot.
Bought a house.
And if there was base housing available, he would live in it. And if there wasn't base housing available, well, he would go out and find a VA or FHA house where he could assume the loan and, take over the payments for $1 down. And he ended up owning 4 houses that way. And when he would leave, he would put some young captain or major into the house, and they would pay the rent, which would cover the mortgage, and went on that way. And over time, he would have others who would follow, and paid off the mortgages on those houses. And so he's passed on now, but his wife now has those homes paid off free and clear.
And a comfortable income.
And now has income.
Right.
Well, the man who did that was my father.
I kind of felt that there was going to be some kind of a familial connect there, because it.
So, I tell folks that if they're interested in building wealth through real estate, when you buy a home and you go on to your next home, don't sell the one you have, keep it and rent it, and buy the next house.
Right.
And just, rent it, put a good tenant in there.
Even if you just broke even in that process, you're ahead. That's what people don't understand. Positive cash flow is important, but if you can put all the numbers down and end up with a goose egg at the end of each month on that property, you're still ahead. You're ahead by the amount of principal gain each and every month.
Right, but the problem with that is the risk of unexpected expenses that is associated with owning property.
Interesting.
Well, here in the Washington, D.C. area, we've got a severe shortage of rental property, which has pushed rents up significantly. And so the typical rent on a house is well above what the house payments are. And so positive cash flow is easily attained. And I tell folks, you take that positive cash flow and you put it in the bank. Don't spend it. Don't go out and, buy a car with it. Don't use it to fund a Range Rover. You put it in the bank. And that way, every 5 years when the carpet needs to be replaced, you've got the money to do it. Every 5 years when it needs to be painted, you've got the money to do it. Just know that every 5 years you're going to have to paint the carpet, paint the walls, put in new carpet.
Every 10, 15 years, a new roof.
That it's going to need a new roof every 20 years, and every 18 years it's going to need an air conditioner, and every 12 years it's going to need a water heater. So save that money to cover those expenses.
Brilliant.
And I have worked with some folks who are investors. And these are folks that I've screened pretty closely. And they do come in with considerable amounts of cash. They're putting down 20, 25%. And they're getting investor loans. And, they're buying houses, and there's some that pay all cash for houses. And so I've got those folks that I've worked with. But, when I get someone who comes to me that says they want to buy a house for investment and they've got $5,000 saved up to do it, and they want some creative financing, I tell them, go put that money into a good mutual fund and you'll be better off.
Absolutely. I'll share a little story. I think both Colin and Eric might be aware of the 1970s. In Southern California, there was a real estate boom, and I think it was pretty much around the country, but it was phenomenal in San Clemente anyway. And we put up some fourplexes designed in such a way the 3-bedroom downstairs front apartment is where you lived, and the other 3 units would cover the mortgage. So you essentially, quote, are living free, right? I mean, you've heard the story. And it did work in those days. The rental income from the 3 other units pretty much covered the expenses of the building. A year, by the way, they were priced at $72,000 at that time for the fourplex. Okay. And, I kept one. It makes sense, right? And it was very comfortable cash flow. And so I had an opportunity because all of a sudden there was a real estate boom in Orange County, California. And these fourplexes were selling for about $125,000. Wow. I wasn't born yesterday. I figured I might as well sell mine, right, for $125,000. It wasn't something I needed desperately. And the profit turned out to be reasonably well. And the interesting thing, though, is the rents didn't go up. And the real estate firm that brought the buyer to me, I did carry a second, was told that, look at this tremendous increase in property values, and you're going to make it up at the back end. Don't worry about the rental income. You're going to make it up on the back end. Well, the property sold again for $175,000, and that's when my second got paid off. And guess what, folks? The rents still had not appreciated greatly. And then, of course, what happened in the real estate boom of the 1970s in Southern California? It went south, right? And here were all these people with the same building that we sold for $72,000. They paid $175,000. It was backwards. And what happened to them, Eric? What happened to those buildings? Who bought them? They didn't pay $170,000. I mean, they bought them at a substantial discount.
Yeah. Right. Well, probably some people who had a lot of cash.
And what kind of people had cash? I mean, this is a rhetorical question, but this is what business, when we choose a business, I think the long-term effects have to be looked at. And Colin made a brilliant statement on wealth building, and he knows that if he wants to do a good job consulting, I agree with you. I do consulting also. And there's only so many people, a very selective group of people that I can work with. Otherwise, I'm cheating everybody. I'm not giving them their fair due, their fair share. So incomes can be limited, but we can, through judicious choice of possibly other business ventures, increase our wealth if we do it properly. And this is my first blab, and my wife's going to be around the corner pretty quick. We have lots to do because we're leaving on Monday morning, and her procrastinating husband hasn't completed his chores for his wife to prepare for the trip. We're going to have to cut this off, but I'm very, very impressed with the knowledge and ability of both Eric and Colin, and I hope over the next few weeks and months we get a chance to share other things, not necessarily in this platform, but others, because it's amazing how people who think the same way we do kind of end up in situations like this, even though we're divergent in many ways. But don't you agree the three of us may be thinking?
It's remarkable. It's remarkable how the nature of thought and the thought processes of entrepreneurs differ from the rest of the world. Yeah. And in ways that are really basic, but also quite disturbing. In primary school, they'll teach you, and my stepsons, my girlfriend's sons, they're teaching them this now. You must learn critical thinking. Okay, critical thinking. Sure, all right, that makes sense. Now, when I was in school, and this was 25, 30 years ago, they were teaching the same thing. You must learn critical thinking. Okay, so what is critical thinking? And they go try to explain critical thinking, and it's evaluating a problem and coming up with possible solutions and a course towards that solution and so on. Yeah, okay. Well, what other method of thinking is there? To people who think that way, it's alien to consider any other method, and entrepreneurs think that way. How can I achieve this objective? I must take this step and this step and this step and this step and so on. And what are the risks and what are the rewards and what are the hoops I'm going to need to jump through to make this happen? there are a lot of people who don't think that way, and it's constantly amazing to me to find the vast number of people who don't. As for entrepreneurship, yes, you want to find I guess back to the subject at hand. What criteria do you use to select a business venture? Well, I select business ventures that start as hobbies.
Yeah.
Something that I enjoy, because only 20% of Americans enjoy their job. And so find something you enjoy, pursue it as a hobby. If you can make some money at it, that's great. If you can turn it into a business, that's great. But be aware, the moment you do that, you're going to begin to hate it. So be very careful about which hobbies you turn into businesses. Because the moment you turn into a business, it becomes a job. And jobs inevitably start to suck over time. So
yeah, maybe it's
get what you can out of it, and then move on to the next one.
Well, a quick little story about my college alma mater. They approached me about 5 years ago because they were starting a department of. They started a program within the business department on entrepreneurial studies. And they wanted to know if I would help them with this program. I said, absolutely, I'd be delighted. And I thought they would maybe want me to come in, fly down to Texas and be a guest speaker or something along those lines. Well, no, they just wanted me to donate money.
Yep. No, I fell into that trap too.
And I said, well, who is going to be teaching these courses? I mean, do you have, because when I went to college there, my accounting professor was a partner at a CPA.
He was an accountant.
My finance professor was a financial planner with a financial planning firm. My business law professor was a lawyer in private practice. And so I figured they were going to have people in business. Well, no.
That's not the style
they
anymore.
had two professors from academia. Yep. And I said, well, what is their experience starting a business? Well, no, they didn't have any. They've always been in academia. And I said, well, to have those two guys explaining entrepreneurship to students is like explaining sex by a man who doesn't have a dick. And
very good. That's a good
so they started that, and they soon learned that the program was lacking, and so they have along the way decided they need to have two part-time associate professors who are from the world of entrepreneurship. Right. And so two friends of mine from back in my day were just selected and brought aboard for this calendar or this year to be a part of the program there, because they realized they needed someone or some people who have been entrepreneurs to explain to the students what it means, what it's like, starting with the word entrepreneur, which is a French word that means he who takes the risk.
Amazing. You know, it's interesting you brought up that scenario, because I was in a discussion several weeks ago, and we're all aware of this fact, that the cabinet of the executive branch of the United States government is comprised of people who have absolutely no experience whatsoever, practical experience, regarding the departments that they had. The Department of Agriculture, Department of Education, I got to give that boy a little bit of kudos. He did have an education background. But here is a massive bureaucracy that's being head by people of absolutely no practical experience in these venues. And maybe that's why we have some ups and downs in our financial and system. I don't know. I don't know if that could be directly attributed to the fact that we've got numbskulls as department heads of the cabinet. But the fact that Colin mentioned entrepreneurs, the crazy people that we are, thank goodness everybody doesn't succeed as being an entrepreneur. I mean, not thank goodness, it's because it takes a really weird mindset, not a weird mindset. It takes someone who has a different outlook on life to be successful at it. And but there's still a lot there. This idea that Eric has, you followed the gentleman that has the DIY garage. I mean, I personally thought that was genius. And I can see that expanding with the right people in the right locations with the right marketing tools, the correct marketing tools. Would I, it's not something I would be interested in because I don't understand mechanics at all. That's why I have a son, because you brought up the fact about hobbies. I know why I enjoyed agriculture is that as a young man, when we moved from Chicago to California, our first home had quite a large yard. In fact, we had 5 acres of an orange orchard. And I found out that if I put a seed in the ground, I could take something nice to my mother in a matter of a few weeks, months. And I got lots of accolades from my mother for growing these things. And I derived a tremendous pleasure from it. I mean, I really felt good about myself, and I enjoyed being outdoors. Later on, I took that hobby, you might say, into a business. I then dropped back to a hobby, but still continued to make money from it. But I never, Colin, I don't know, I never felt that I ever went to work farming several hundred acres or farming 20 acres or farming 2 acres, of which we made a very viable income off of 2 acres. So I don't think everybody who does take their avocation, their hobby, whatever, their passion, and turn it into a business, I don't think everybody becomes burdened with the fact that they're going to work.
You can certainly avoid that. My comment was a cautionary one. You can take too far. You can scale the business to a degree that it will become a burden, and that's another reason why I don't hire full-time employees. I do it myself because I can generate the income I need to generate. Mm-hmm. I enjoy what I do. I work when I want. I don't when I don't, and it's very satisfying. Right. But if I were to build an empire with 150 employees and having to hustle for new contracts constantly, that would be aggravating and unpleasant in every. And
I don't think you would enjoy yourself as much. I don't think you would be pleased with yourself. There's a young man I know. In fact, we're leaving on this trip to end up at his wedding. Finally, at age 35, he's taking the big plunge. And I remember this young man at 13. Well, actually, before that, I'll tell you a quick story that he was a very good baseball player and really was a decent motocross aficionado. But his sister liked horses. And one day he was riding his bicycle on his newspaper route, and his sister was working with a horse. And she was getting quite upset with the horse and acting as some young preteen ladies might. And my younger son, her younger brother, said, "What's wrong?" And she says, "This stupid blankety blank horse won't do anything." And he got off his bicycle and he said, "Well, let me try it." And this first time he'd ever been on a horse. And in a matter of minutes, everything was working in the right direction. I happened to be out of town. I came home on a Friday night. Saturday, my wife says, "We're leaving." I said, "Where are we going?" She said, "Your son is buying a horse today. He's taking money out of his bank and he's buying a horse." So he bought a horse. He then went on to high school. And part of high school as a sophomore in FFA is you have to write a business plan. And he wrote a business plan. And today at age 35, he has followed his business to the letter. and he rides 10 horses a day, 7 days a week. If he's not riding 10, he's showing on the weekends. He wrote a business plan to be a horse trainer when he was 13 years old. And the interesting thing is, financially speaking, he is just starting to catch up with his peers who went to college and, got good jobs and, out of college early. Because in the horse business, you then, after you get your degree, you then go apprentice for nothing, literally nothing. But you ride the best and you travel with the best and you meet the best. So he put in his dues. And the interesting thing is he's never ridden a horse because of the money he could make, which is substantial today. But he always rode a horse because he personally enjoyed the outcome. And at age 35, he doesn't go to work. He just built a new facility in Texas, and he does what he wants to do 7 days a week, has enough income to pay the bills, puts some money aside, and is starting to come into his own. His weekly percentage of the winnings showing is increasing constantly. I mentioned my son, but what's interesting is about 30 kids who hung out at our ranch during those days have all turned out the same way. They're all pursuing that which they really enjoyed when they were kids. And I, it makes my wife and I happy. She ran fastest. She's mad at me for being on Blab. It makes us feel good because that was the environment that we engendered around our place. We had kids there all the time riding, it was the hangout place. But so I've tried recently in the last few years, as life has become better, that I want to share this idea with people to pursue that dream. And Colin, you indicated it. I think that cautionary note is very good, though. You have to keep that passion going. I think Eric still enjoys the real estate business because actually the DIY garage is really part of real estate. So I don't,
My younger daughter is a horse trainer also.
Is she in Texas? She's still in Texas?
No, she's here in Virginia.
Oh, that's right. You're in Virginia.
Yeah, which is the land of hunter jumper.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
And English saddle.
Right.
And she and her sister rode 10 years in competition when they were in elementary school, middle school, and high school. And she went to college for a criminal justice degree, came out, picked up 6 students from a friend of hers who was traveling between 2 barns and found it too tedious. And so she picked up some students at this one barn and then started picking up more students and more students and more students and became manager of the barn. And now she has bunches of students. She runs a summer camp program.
Where's she located, Eric?
She runs the barn.
Where's she located?
Right here in Northern Virginia.
Is she near you? Was Alexandria?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Can you share her name?
Yes.
Because obviously that's who I talk to every day, are people, and I have an awful lot of close friends in the hunter jumper industry also.
Sure. Her first name is Erin. Last name Blackwelder.
Okay.
Blackwelder, black
right,
like the
like
color.
your name.
Welder like
Yes,
the tradesman.
Okay. I'm going to do some investigation sometime in the next few weeks, because it's always fun to meet people with that same tie, because even though my son is a cutting horse trainer, he did a lot of flat seat also. There is everyone, and again, I go back to young people, every young person that I ever have known that had a close connection with the horse seemed to me to have matured into fairly stable people. That's not a pun. There's something about that relationship of a 1,200-pound animal and a puny human that gives you a real sense of give and take, and gives you an opportunity to learn to discipline yourself, to understand the other creature, be it human or animal, react accordingly, but still stay in control. Actually, yes, those attributes lend themselves very well to business. Isn't it amazing? But I mean, we've had, like I said, most of the kids that hung out are not in the horse business today, but they are entrepreneurial minded and have done reasonably well. It takes a weird person to stay in the horse business. I mean, really weird. You know, why would this kid get up at 4:30 every morning and sit on 10 colts a day and take care? He has to keep a herd of 100 cows available. He has to manage those. And, you know, some horses don't make it. Some horses do not, even after he's gone through the training process, aren't going to be competitive. And then he has to tell the owner, sure, you've just given me $12,000 to train a horse. And this horse should not be in the show ring. But you don't find that out the first day, right? You have to take that right, young horse and carry it through. Same thing with hunter jumpers, I know, you know. So, right. But anyway, that's great. I'm going to look your daughter up, and the barn that we're putting up in Pembroke, Virginia next week is for a hunter jumper facility. So, wonderful. Yeah, it'll be a brand new facility in Pembroke. So anyway, gentlemen, Colin, anything else to share, sir?
No, I guess the final point is on entrepreneurship. Start early. Take risks as a kid.
Right.
Because you'll get into the proper mindset, and two, you can afford to take those risks and potentially suffer some losses along the way, more so than you can later on.
Right. Well, I really appreciate the two of you. Obviously, we didn't have hundreds of people here, but I don't know hundreds of people on Blab. And by the way, what prompted you, Colin, to come in, or whatever it is we do here?
Well, because there are a lot of folks on Blab that purport to be social media experts and MLM marketers. Yes. And the question you posed in your topic was much more interesting than those.
Okay.
And
well, but you know, I do get paid a reasonable amount of money for social media consulting, but we don't talk about that.
No, that's the point.
It's only for a few selected people.
Right. Because if you ever claim to be an expert, then whoever you're talking to should run for the hills. And if ever you try to convince someone that MLM businesses are actual businesses, then you should just shoot yourself in the head. So,
along that line, though, I have found the consulting side of my life is focused on people who are, guess what, in agriculture, food service.
Right. Well, that's because this is the area you have expertise, right, and you're qualified to consult in these areas, just like I'm qualified to consult in the area of IT. I wouldn't pretend that I'm qualified to consult in farming or in anything, or in construction or anything else.
Right. Eric, what brought you here? Was it the headline?
You wrote a very effective.
Okay, because I heard somebody say that, how come nobody comes? And then somebody on another Blab said, well, your headline sucks. And this was not a quick typing. I actually, believe it or not, at my age, I gave it some thought. And I'm tickled to death that two people showed up.
So here's the thing. Now this is your lesson in modern in this particular platform as it relates to, as it is a platform of social media.
Right.
The network effects you have in Blab as a platform versus, say, Twitter are at least threefold greater. Because you have a notification system in Blab. I have some followers. What have I got? 400 and something?
Wow.
Maybe, let's see. 481 as of today. Wow. Yesterday I started with 330. So the platform is growing quite substantially. But the point is, as you grow followership, those people will be notified about any blab that you attend and sit in a video seat. So you can see the people coming in here on the right in the chat area. These are all people who follow me, and I often follow them as well.
Oh, I see.
And so they've been notified that this blab is going on, and they're here.
So it wasn't my scintillating personality that brought him in. It's all because of Colin, right?
Well, to the extent that I know who these people are and that they follow me, that might be the case. Good. It also may be the case that they were browsing the homepage and saw the content. Now, it indicates on the right the people who came in here. It indicates on the top the people who are still here.
Oh, I see.
So we have one person other than ourselves.
It's David Vaughn.
I guess yes, David, it would seem Vaughn. So. Hi, David. How's it going? And here's David. You want to grab a seat? Say hi.
All right. Let me see. I got to push the green button, eh? There we go.
Yep.
There
you go.
So we have a Colin follower here. Good afternoon, David.
Hello.
Or good morning, in my case.
Or someone who might have just browsed the homepage and seen it. How did you come across it? We were just talking about the various network effects of the platform.
It was the latter. I was browsing, looking for someone else, and saw the title and thought I would just come and see what you guys were talking about today.
Well, we were just finishing up. We were talking about entrepreneurship and consulting practice, and we were just finishing up on some of the characteristics of this platform as a social media mechanism and the network effects that can be garnered from it.
Real quick, David, the topic obviously is what criteria do you use to choose a business venture? Can you share that with us kind of quickly? I mean,
as you were talking about your son, that was one of the things that really hit home for me is the fact that the business ventures that a lot of people go into because of the per se money end of it versus going into something for what they believe in, their passion. And for me, it's the passion. I've done the go to college, get a job, work 9 to 5, and that's just not fulfilling for the vast majority of the people. It gives them money, but it doesn't answer what they want to do with their life. And it's not until they find their passion and they start to fulfill it that they actually start to really live their life. And I like Colin's point is the earlier you do that, the more risk that you can take and you will find your path. But as you move on in life, it's harder to make those choices because you've got a family on one side and the risk on the other. You've got to balance and say, can I take the risk and go after my passion?
I'm wondering if that's why my son waited almost as long as I did to get married and start a family. There's a funny side note here, Colin. I have a young wife, and younger than I anyway. And we do have some great grandchildren, and of course, our youngest boy is not married. Okay, so and I married my wife when I was 36. We had another child who passed away, and he was born when I was 38. But as he was growing up, one thing that I did hear from him, he says, it's the pits having an old man, really, for a father, when all of his friends' fathers were young, vigorous, And so one of the things I posed to him several months ago, I said, you realize that you're getting very close to the age I was and you didn't like it. So I think it's about time to light a fire under yourself.
Well, my girlfriend's kids are 10 and 14. And I don't know, I can still kick a soccer ball around.
Right.
Aikido is interesting, but it becomes a challenge sometimes.
Right.
But yes, I would not have wanted to wait much longer. Right. But I did manage to skip all of the diaper changes, so that's a plus.
Well, that's interesting. So I enjoyed it, actually. You know, it was something I didn't have to go through in my 20s, but I found a house full of children to be a real pleasure. And of course, we were raising our own field hands. You understand?
Oh, that's very efficient.
When people drove by,
that's a wise economic choice.
Yes, my 5-year-old daughter bringing a load of corn in gunny sacks on her Shetland pony from the field to the produce stand. We actually had somebody come up and complain about that, and we gave them the proverbial finger and told them to get in their car and drive away. Yeah. But, it's amazing. Another neighbor of ours was chided by the high school because they requested their son to be home to help with the milking after school, and the football coach wanted him to be on football. They literally called the parents.
That's a sort of ridiculous reason, too. You'd think that
because
something like, I don't know, we're not going to take him out of school 2 hours early to go to milk the
No, I mean, it was after school.
It was football. That was the thing. You must have your child play football instead of doing an honest day's work. Wow,
right.
That's. But no, I remember as a kid having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning, collect eggs from the chicken coop, and then of course the emergency wake up at 4:30 and birth a goat. That was always fun, a couple times a year. But it instills it instills a better mentality in kids to have them work a little bit.
Well, I am getting the real. We have to do things. I promised my wife a trip to the next town for a shopping trip for our impending leave on Monday. I guess, how do these things end? I stop the recording. Is that correct?
End, right. You can stop the recording, say something at the end, stop the recording.
Okay.
You click the X in the upper right corner of each of the video windows, and everyone gets exited out.
Okay. Do I understand that if you guys want to stick around, you can? I mean,
we can.
Or would you rather I just X everybody out?
You might. Well, it's up to you. You probably want to stop the recording. That way, you'll receive the recording by email, and it'll stop where you expect it to, and you won't get any other random content along the way. But the point I was making earlier about the network effects of Blab. Where on Twitter, for example, you get a notification about an event in the past, a piece of news or a link to something. On Blab, you get, as a follower of a person, you get a notification of what's going on right now. It's a far greater call to action. So if you've enabled notifications when you set this up in your web browser, it prompted you at the beginning, do you want to allow notifications? You said yes or no. If you said yes, a notification will pop up in the upper right every time someone you follow enters a Blab and sits in a video seat. Okay. So people will come in and look at the Blab and decide if it's something that they want to participate in or not. A half dozen people that I know have come in here and looked and decided it was not for them, I guess. But, but it draws an audience, at least temporarily, and then we need to engage that audience in order to keep them around. But the network effects are quite stunning on this.
Yeah, the one thing, Colin, also is over on the left-hand side of the Blab, any one of us can click to tell a little bird, and it'll send out a tweet to your line so that you can tell people. Yeah, it'll tell people that you're in, and so that you can have people start to join it.
That's true too. What you'll see though is that you get somewhat lesser results from that than you do just from sitting down, because the people who are notified within Blab are already in Blab and participating. People on Twitter are maybe not, although the onboarding process is very easy. There's no additional password required. You just log into the Twitter account, so it's not a really big issue. But both are important tools, and yes, it is good form to tweet out the existence of a Blab when you sit down and start talking.
That would be good in the beginning. Well, I really appreciate it. Eric, are you a newcomer to Blab also, or are you a veteran?
Yes, I am.
What is your take on this? I mean, I'm kind of impressed. I mean,
well, I was impressed with with this session today. I enjoyed it, and I'm going to be looking around Blab and looking for other conversations with good content.
Well, expect a follow up from me in the near future, because I'm fascinated. Obviously, your business is one of my, hot buttons, and I like, and especially being in Virginia, and I have that association with the young couple in Fredericksburg. So who knows? Maybe things will work out for both of us, mutually beneficial. So, and Colin, you have been a genius in helping me learn a lot about this. I'm going to follow up on the that piece of software you mentioned.
So I mentioned CamTwist, which is for Mac, and Minicam, which is for Windows. And the other one, which you probably don't want to invest in, is Wirecast. That's for more professional production.
I don't see myself being living here.
but CamTwist and Minicam are both free and relatively easy to install. And there are plenty of people on here who can walk you through that installation if you run into problems.
Okay, I have a quick question. I noticed there's a yellow button next to your name, a white next to Eric, and a red next to David. Is that because of your seat placements?
It is because of the seat placements, but the seats can get rearranged if someone exits and comes back in. The relevance is only as it relates to the color of the chat in the right-hand chat window. You'll see when you type something in chat, your name is highlighted in blue, which corresponds to your name.
Right, and you were yellow.
Right, and the idea being that it's somewhat easier to follow along and track who's saying what in both locations.
Okay. Well, we're gonna say officially this is over. I'll X everybody out. I'll stop the recording, and I hope I'll be given the opportunity to chat with all of you gentlemen and some of you that were around but not around in the future. We got somebody else just came in who was just Alice is curious was here all the time, but she didn't come in. That's okay, Alice. You would have been a much. I would have left to come in because you're much better looking than I
tell her that every day.
Anyway, we're going to come up with a. Pardon?
Never. I tell her that every day.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.